So we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today, like how to tackle the world's biggest problems. And you know what's interesting?
What's that?
The Baha'i faith thinks the answers might not just be practical. They say we got to add a spiritual dimension.
That's a unique perspective. I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, me too. And that's why we're using the spiritualization of human endeavors as our guide today. It's a really interesting source because it doesn't just talk the talk. It shows how the Baha'i community is actually putting these principles into action. So, ready to go deep?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, inequality. It's everywhere, right? And the Baha'i faith tackles it head on with this really powerful idea, the oneness of humanity.
Right, that everyone deserves a good life. No one should be struggling while others are living large. It really challenges the kind of inequality we see all over the globe.
Yeah, just turn on the news and it's right there in your face. But what I love about this is the Baha'i faith doesn't just talk about it. They do something about it. Like, take the Baha'i community in Vanuatu. They're tackling inequality in rural areas through education with this program called FUND-DAEC. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah. FUND-DAEC. It stands for the Foundation for the Application and Teaching of Sciences. They're not just teaching academics, though.
Right. It's not just about math and science.
They're weaving in moral education, too. It's like knowledge and character building all in one.
It's about empowering people to lift themselves up, break out of those cycles of poverty. And it's working. I read that the program has helped boost high school graduation rates in the communities where it's running by like 30%.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right. It shows you that when you combine education with ethics, you get some serious results. You're not just giving handouts, you're giving people the tools to create a better life for themselves.
It's a much more holistic approach, tackling the root causes of inequality, not just the symptoms. A lot of times, we just focus on the economic side of things.
Yeah, like just throw money at the problem.
Exactly. But this shows that ethics are just as important. It makes you think, doesn't it?
Totally. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about corruption. I think we can all agree corruption messes things up big time.
Oh, absolutely. Undermines everything.
And the Baha'i teachings, they're big on this idea of moral integrity, especially in institutions.
They're all about transparency, accountability, no shady backroom deals. That resonates with anyone who's fed up with corruption, which I think is most of us.
Yeah, for sure. And they've got this really interesting way of governing. It's called consultative governance. Basically, decisions are made together as a group, which helps minimize corruption,
Yeah, because it distributes power and lessens the chance for one person to take advantage of the system. And just to clarify, when they say everyone, they really mean everyone.
That's right. Everyone has a voice.
Baha'i elections don't involve campaigning or nominations. Each adult member of the community prays and reflects before choosing who they think is best suited to serve on these governing councils. They're called local and national spiritual assemblies.
I love that. It really puts the focus on serving the community, not personal gain. So different from what we're used to. Right?
Yeah, it is, but it works. They're proving it in places like Brazil, where local and national Baha'i communities are using this system to address urban poverty.
So it's not just some idealistic theory, it's actually happening. It's like, imagine if our governments worked like that.
Right. What a concept. It's a proactive approach. They're focused on preventing corruption from happening in the first place, instead of just cleaning up the mess afterward.
I like that, being proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly. It really shows a commitment to justice and building a fairer system.
Okay, so now, the big one, climate change. This is where things get really interesting. The Baha'i teachings have this really unique view. They say we're not just owners of this planet, we're caretakers.
We're responsible for it. Our actions, they have spiritual consequences. That adds a whole other level of responsibility, Yeah. It's not just about saving the planet. It's about aligning our actions with something bigger than ourselves.
I love that. And speaking of taking action, have you heard about those green energy projects they've got going on in the Caribbean?
Oh, yeah, those are fascinating. In the Bahamas and Jamaica, Baha'i-inspired communities are investing in solar and wind power, moving away from fossil fuels.
It's like they're putting their beliefs into practice, literally powering their lives with renewable energy.
Exactly. It's not just about adopting the technology. It's about living in a way that reflects their values.
I bet it hasn't been easy, though. These projects must come with some challenges, right?
Oh, for sure. One of the biggest hurdles has been the initial cost.
Yeah, that makes sense. Solar panels, wind turbines, that stuff's not cheap.
Especially for smaller communities. But these communities have shown incredible resilience.
They found ways to overcome those financial obstacles.
Absolutely. They've pooled resources, gotten creative with funding, and even secured grants to make it happen. It's proof that when you're committed to sustainability, you can find a way.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
And it's already making a difference. They're seeing lower energy costs and becoming less reliant on fossil fuels. It's a win-win.
For sure. And it challenges the way we think about progress. Our whole culture is built around this idea of more, more, more.
Always wanting the latest gadget, the bigger house, the faster car. It's like our happiness is tied to consuming more stuff.
Exactly. But these communities are demonstrating a different way. It's about moderation, contentment, being happy with what you have. Imagine if more of us adopted that mindset. Think of the impact it would have on the planet.
It's mind-blowing. So we've talked about inequality, corruption, and climate change. It's amazing how the Baha'i faith is weaving spirituality into these massive global issues.
Yeah, what's really cool? They don't just see progress as this purely material thing. They believe that material and spiritual progress go hand in hand.
Okay, tell me more about that. It sounds like a really interesting concept.
Well, it's like this. It's like when we think about progress, right? We usually picture skyscrapers and fancy gadgets, economic growth, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like more money, better technology.
Yeah.
Basically just more.
Right, exactly. But the Baha'i faith, they see it differently. They say material progress without spiritual progress, well, it's kind of like building a house without a foundation.
Oh, I see. So it's not enough to just have the fancy stuff.
Nope. They believe that material and spiritual progress, they got to go hand in hand like two sides of the same coin.
So you're saying you can't have one without the other?
Pretty much. I mean, look around. All this material progress without the ethics, without the spiritual grounding, it's led to some pretty messed up stuff.
Yeah, like climate change and inequality.
Exactly. It's like we're driving a super fast car but forgot to install the brakes.
That's a scary thought.
Right. But on the flip side, if you only focus on spiritual progress, like being super good and kind, but you ignore the real world and all its problems, well, that's not going to work either.
So it's all about finding that balance. Material and spiritual working together.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, the Baha'i teachings actually give you ways to apply this idea to your life, make it practical.
Okay, so how does that work? Give me an example.
Well, take education, for example. They believe that education shouldn't just be about filling your head with facts and figures.
Yeah, it's got to be more than just memorizing stuff.
Right. They say it should also build your character, teach you how to make good decisions, be responsible, be kind.
So it's not just about getting a good job, but about becoming a good person.
Exactly. Nurturing the whole person.
I like that. So what about economics? How does this balanced progress thing work in the money world?
Good question. So they believe in economic systems that are built on service and stewardship.
So it's not just about making as much money as possible.
Nope. It's about creating wealth in a way that benefits everybody and doesn't trash the planet or take advantage of people.
So like fair trade, ethical investing, those kinds of things.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone benefits and nobody gets left behind.
That makes sense. But it also makes you think, what would our institutions look like if they were really built on that idea?
That is a big question. And this is where their approach to governance gets really interesting. They have this whole system that's designed to embody those principles of justice, unity, and working together.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned that earlier. It's totally different from how things are usually done.
Right. So they have these groups called local and national spiritual assemblies. They're basically elected groups that make decisions for the Baha'i community.
Wow.
And the whole thing is based on consultation, collaboration, everyone working together.
And their elections are super interesting too, right?
Yeah, totally different from our elections. It's not about campaigning and trying to win votes. It's more about having these deep discussions where everyone shares their ideas and listens to each other.
Like giant brainstorming session?
Kind of. The goal is to find a solution that everyone can agree on, something that benefits the whole community.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Like a dream come true compared to the political battles we usually see.
Right. It's really about putting those principles of unity and justice into action. And the people elected to these assemblies, they're not seen as bosses.
Oh, so they're not like the big guys in charge.
Nope. More like servants, really. They're there to help everyone work together and make the best decisions for the community.
Okay, but can that kind of system really work on a larger scale? Like outside the Baha'i community?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's something the Baha'i community is trying to figure out,
So they're testing it out.
Yeah, they see it as an ongoing learning process. But they do believe that those core principles, justice, unity, working together, those are universal. Those could work anywhere.
So it's like a blueprint.
Exactly. A blueprint for a world that's more just, more compassionate, more collaborative. And it's a reminder that real change isn't just about changing the rules. It's about changing the way we think and act, changing ourselves.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing to see how the Baha'i faith is putting these ideas into practice. They're not just talking about it, they're living it. From education to economics to governance.
Yeah, it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And it shows that real change is possible, right?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we have the power to build a better world, starting with ourselves.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about these big global issues, but how can we actually apply these ideas to our own lives? Like, what can we do day to day?
That's where it gets really personal.
It's one thing to talk about changing the world, right? But how do we actually make it happen? Like, what can we do in our own lives that will really make a difference?
Well, the Baha'i teachings, they talk a lot about inner transformation. It's this idea that building a better world starts with each individual, working on ourselves.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about changing laws or systems. It's about changing us.
Exactly. Like changing our hearts, our minds, our habits.
That sounds tough. Where do we even start with something like that?
It starts small. It doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. It could be something as simple as thinking about how you spend your money.
Okay, like being a more conscious consumer.
Exactly. Like asking yourself, do I really need this? Right. Or was this made in an ethical way?
So it's about aligning our actions with our values, even when it's not the easiest thing to do.
Right. Or it could be about how you treat other people, striving to be more understanding, more patient, more forgiving, even when people are driving you crazy.
It's about those little moments, right, where you have a choice to be kind or to be selfish.
Exactly. And those little moments, they add up. They create a ripple effect.
Because when we change ourselves, we change the world around us.
Exactly. And it inspires other people to do the same. It's contagious.
Okay, I get that. But some people might say, hey, we're facing these huge, urgent problems like climate change. Don't we need to focus on big solutions? Isn't personal virtue kind of slow?
That's a fair point. And yes, we definitely need to change the systems too, no question.
So it's not either. It's both hand.
Right. We need both individual change and systemic change. But the thing is, those two things, they're not separate. They feed into each other.
Oh, okay. So how does that work?
Well, when individuals change, when they start living by these principles of justice, unity, kindness, it creates a momentum,
So it's like a snowball effect.
Exactly. And that momentum, it pushes for bigger changes. It makes those systemic changes more likely to happen.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. This whole deep dive has been so thought-provoking. It's really shifted my perspective on how we can tackle these big problems.
Me too. It's like a whole new way of looking at the world, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest takeaway for you? What really stood out?
I think what struck me the most is how interconnected everything is. Like our individual choices, our communities, the planet, it's all woven together.
We're all in this together.
Exactly. And what we do, it matters. Even those small everyday choices, they have an impact.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about waiting for someone else to fix things. It's about each of us taking responsibility right here, right now.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in building a better world.
Well said. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. And you know what? It makes me feel hopeful.
Me too.
Like, imagine a world where every decision, big or small, was made with that spiritual awareness. That's a world worth fighting for, don't you think?
Absolutely. A world where everyone feels connected, everyone feels valued, everyone has a chance to thrive.
That's the dream. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been an amazing conversation.
My pleasure.
And to everyone listening, we hope this has inspired you to think about how you can bring a little more light into the world, starting today. Keep thinking, keep questioning, keep striving. Until next time.